Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We had a pretty stacked slate, a lot of takeaways that I have from these games, so I'm going to go ahead and just get right into it, keep this intro short. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Of course, we're going to begin with Mavericks versus Pacers. This is a game that I was looking forward to, continuing to see how Luka and Kyrie build that chemistry together, and the Pacers, while they've struggled over the course of this second half of the season, when Tyrese is on the floor, Miles Turner, Benedict Mathurin, when everybody's playing, they're a fun squad that can beat basically anybody. And the Mavericks did come into this one as pretty heavy favorites, but at halftime, Indiana was up by 10 points. The third quarter, they continued to kind of dominate the Mavericks on both sides of the ball, and all of a sudden it looked like Dallas might drop another game that they probably should win. However, in the fourth quarter, Luka hit a big three. Reggie Bullock matched that with a three of his own. Following a Tyrese Haliburton free throw, the Mavs were only down 2 with 2 minutes to go. I felt like all the momentum was shifting their way. They were actually getting stops, which they didn't do at basically any other point in the game. And in fact, the Pacers didn't score a single point the rest of the way outside of intentionally fouling free throws. But neither did Dallas. Dallas could not buy a bucket to save their lives. They just continued to go to 3 after 3. They didn't take a 2-point attempt the rest of the game, despite it being a 2-point game. You think eventually, when you have Luka Doncic, someone that could bully basically any matchup to the basket, or at least draw some free throws, same with Kyrie Irving, one of the best finishers and attackers of the basket in the league, they would eventually go and try and attack inside the paint. They didn't do that. They continued to go to 3 after 3. There was also one play where Luka had like a layup and he kicked it out for a 3 rather than taking that shot. I don't know what happened, but they just collapsed down the stretch. Despite that, though, the Pacers were only up 2 with a few seconds left, with the Mavericks having the ball, so they had a chance to go ahead and win the game after Andrew Nembhard missed back-to-back free throws. But the play they went to was a 3. It was a Kyrie Irving isolation step back 3, the same play we've seen Luka take multiple times over the course of this season, really over the course of his career. And sure, he knocks them down sometimes, but I feel like an isolation step back 3 for one of your stars should not be your consistent, let's go get a win type of play. Once again, they could have gone for the 2. You're at home, feels like you've got the momentum, you can go to overtime, you've got Luka, you've got Kyrie, bank on your guys, you can go for a 2, and if you're going to get a 3, drop a better play than that. This has been one of my biggest issues with Jason Kidd as a coach. It feels like whenever they get to crunch time, the plan is, Luka, do something. Just go ahead and win us the game, whether that's a step back 3, an isolation mid-range, just be heroic in some way. It feels like there's never any true game plan. Now it happened with Kyrie. Once again, they were like, okay, Kyrie, go get us a win. Just go do something. And he took a step back 3, which he can hit sometimes, but you've got to be able to get a better look than that. So they completely collapsed down the stretch. And with this L, Dallas falls to 1-4 in the 5 games that Luka and Kyrie have played alongside each other. Now, that is only 5 games. There's still plenty of time for them to build chemistry, and things aren't going to work out right away. But even still, you would expect them to win a few more of those games. The only win that they've had since the 2 of them have played alongside each other is against the Spurs, who at that point, or up until tonight, had lost 16 straight games. Spoiler alert, they beat Utah tonight, so they broke that losing streak. But a team that had lost 16 games in a row isn't exactly the most impressive win. Sure, they had close losses to good teams like the Kings, the Timberwolves, the Lakers now are pretty solid with LeBron James. That was the last game he played before his injury. But they were also up 27 in that game, and it felt like they just kind of stopped caring when they went up big, forgot that there was a rest of a game to be played, and blew the biggest lead that they've blown probably all season. I'm sure none of you are surprised that the biggest issue for them has been their defense. It was expected to be a problem when they traded for Kyrie Irving. Him and Luka in a backcourt isn't exactly great defensively. They don't have many other stoppers on this team, and it was a problem before the deal. So everybody, me included, expected this to be kind of an issue. However, it's been way worse than I think I was really anticipating. They've been the 5th worst defensive team in these 8 games since the Kyrie trade, and they've fallen to the 23rd ranked defense in the league over the course of the entire season. Despite how great their offense can be some nights, you're not going to win if you're the 23rd ranked defense. Of course, part of this is that they traded Dorian Finney-Smith, who's one of their best wing defenders in the Kyrie deal. Sure, they still have a good one like Josh Green, who I don't know why he's not starting. I don't understand why he's coming off the bench for Justin Holiday, but that's another story. We can talk about Jason Kidd again later in the video perhaps, who I just don't think is a great coach. But Josh Green should be starting to give you some more perimeter defense, but even outside of him, there are not many great defenders on this roster, especially in the paint. Christian Wood is a walking defensive mismatch. Whoever he's guarding is probably going to end up looking like prime Shaq by the end of the night. Dwight Powell isn't a great defender, and he's not great offensively either. Maxi Kleba's not going to get you a ton of stops either. JaVale McGee's been a really disaster of a signing, even though he's been playing better recently. He just hasn't lived up to expectations, so they need some type of rim protector, some type of bigger interior force, but they don't have it on the roster. I don't understand why they didn't make more deals for defensive-minded players. That was one of my main requests for this team. In my video where I talked about the Kyrie trade, I said I liked it as long as they went out and got some better defensive guys to go alongside this backcourt. They didn't do that, so now they're getting torched on a night-in, night-out basis. Offensively, it's been amazing. They've been the second best defense over these 8 games since they picked up Kyrie, although their crunch time offense has been a work in progress. Like I mentioned tonight, it felt like they weren't getting many good looks. It felt like they were just refusing to attack the basket, which does not make sense with the personnel on this roster. I feel like too often they try to live and die by the 3, and when your guys go cold, there's not much you can do. Just try and get downhill, get to the free throw line, do something other than chucking up brick after brick. I feel like eventually you have to try and switch things up if it's not working. Another good example of their crunch time offense not working was against the Timberwolves, where they had a chance to go ahead and hit a game-winning shot. It was Kyrie and it was Luka on the court, and the two of them just kept passing the ball back and forth because they were both locked up by Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels, two solid defenders. But even still, when you have two of the best offensive players in the league, you would imagine they would at least get a shot off, but they didn't until they eventually turned the ball over and the Timberwolves ended up with the win. It just feels like they haven't really figured things out. They're still trying to sync up. Jason Kidd hasn't exactly figured out how to use these two guys, although I don't know if he ever will. And so far, through the first 5 games of them playing alongside each other, I haven't been super impressed. Of course, it's not all their fault, like I mentioned. There are a lot of other personnel issues on the roster, in particular defensively. They could use some more consistent offensive threats as well, but it's too late to really address those. I mean, they could pick up like a Nerlens Noel in the buyout market potentially, but I don't think he's going to come in and fix their paint defense, or I don't think there are really any major wing stoppers that they could bring in on the buyout market to fix their issues that they have. I think those are going to have to be addressed in the offseason, but the problem is, the big gamble with the Kyrie trade is that he could walk the second this season ends in free agency, maybe to a Los Angeles Lakers. Him and LeBron looked pretty excited to be on the same All-Star team, which, they're friends, so that's understandable. But even so, you have to wonder, is Kyrie angling to end up in Los Angeles if this thing doesn't work out, which right now, it hasn't looked phenomenal. But once again, there is very few games played under their belts. There's plenty of time for them to figure this thing out. But if they don't, they have an early playoff exit, Kyrie walks, all of a sudden, the big gamble that you took, it looks like a disaster. You're in a terrible spot going into next season. If Kyrie stays, you can go ahead and try and rework this roster, bring in defensive guys. But if he doesn't, things look really, really bad for the Mavericks going forward, and all of a sudden you're in a way worse spot than you were heading into even this season where things didn't look phenomenal. I once again want to reiterate, it's only been 5 games, there's plenty of time for them to figure this thing out, and all their losses have been close, but there are some glaring issues, especially on the defensive end, that I don't think any building of chemistry between Luka and Kyrie is going to work out or solve. For the Pacers, I want to give a quick shout to Tyrese Haliburton, who had a 32.7 rebound, 6-dime performance on his birthday, so shout to him. He's been amazing this season. Just an absolute revelation for the Pacers, and having a all-star caliber talent like him to start the rebuild is huge. Moving on to some of the other games, we had Clippers versus Timberwolves, which is a really fun national TV matchup, and Minnesota gets a big momentum win after some pretty rough losses recently. They were led by Anthony Edwards, who had 18 points on just 33% shooting, but defensively he was locked in, which is something he's been doing a really good job of as of late. And he also had a great dime down low to Rudy Gobert for the dagger dunk right there at the end of things, so shout to him. Learning to continue to impact the game even when the shot's not falling is a big step for young players, and it feels like he's really taken that step this season. Also shout to Jaden McDaniels, who's been so good this season, and he led the way with 20 points. Just amazing for Minnesota. He's going to get an absolute bag on his next contract, and it's very deserved. As for the Clippers, this is now their 3rd straight loss coming out of the All-Star break. The first one was that wild game against the Kings. They just lost by 10 points in overtime to the Denver Nuggets, and now this one where once again they made a comeback and it looked like they had potentially the momentum, but they collapsed down the stretch. They made some bad shots, they had some bad turnovers, just their defense even fell apart at some moments too, which is supposed to be their calling card. just couldn't figure things out. And it's been a problem for the Clippers. They have to be able to close games out, especially against teams like Minnesota, who they're trying to pass up in seeding. They're trying to be ahead of them in the standings when it's all said and done. You can't have these losses. Bad turnovers, too, have been a plague on this squad. A lot of weird rotations still coming from Tyronn Lue, who said he's going to continue to experiment over the next few games before he kind of solidifies things leading up to the playoffs. So we'll see who ends up making that rotation. I can think of a couple names off the top of my head who probably shouldn't. I'm sure if you're a Clippers fan, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But yeah, it's not been great for LA, and they've got to end up winning this one if they really want to prove that they're contenders. Moving on, let's talk about Bucks versus Nets, which saw Milwaukee get the win and push their win streak to now 15 games. They've won more games over the course of this stretch than some of the teams in the NBA have this entire season. They're dominating, and I feel like not enough people are talking about just how quite good they've been. They're at the top of the Eastern Conference now, the 1 seed, passing the Boston Celtics recently. Of course, Middleton is still not back to himself. He's still coming off the bench. Some of their other core role players haven't played a lot at some points in this season, but it hasn't mattered, mainly because of Giannis, who had 33, 15, and 4 in this game, and I feel like deserves more hype as an MVP candidate, the way that he's been playing, the way that he's been carrying this team a lot of nights when they've dealt with injuries. He deserves more love. I made a full video about that recently, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But yeah, shout out to the Bucks, who have been incredible. They're looking very, very dangerous out there in the East. As for the Nets, they had a good performance. Mikal Bridges had 31 points and looks really good. He continues to look like he's finding his true potential, that he could be a lot more than just a 3-and-D complementary wing. So hopefully that is the case. I love what I've seen from him growing in an expanded role in Brooklyn. Spencer Dinwiddie also had a good game with 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 dimes. But ultimately, when you're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, it's just hard to win. Then we had Grizzlies versus Lakers, which at first seemed like LA might steal this one without LeBron James, who's out for a couple of weeks with that ankle injury. They were leading for a lot of the first half. Ja Morant was really struggling. The rest of the guys couldn't seem to get any offense going from Memphis. And then Ja has a 28-point third quarter, the highest scoring in franchise history. He drops a 39-point triple-double, and the Grizzlies end up blowing out the Lakers by the end of things. Just a big win for them. As for the Lakers, you would love to get this one without LeBron James, but it's going to be hard to win without him. AD had 28 points and 19 rebounds. Lonnie Walker had 21. But not having LeBron, who really orchestrates your offense, as well as D'Angelo Russell, they just don't have a high-level point guard at the moment, and that's going to really make the offense suffer. Last game I want to go in-depth into is Warriors versus Blazers, and it's really just for one specific reason. Portland was up by 23 points in this game. I thought it was over. I started writing down some notes for this video, and then all of a sudden I look again, and the Warriors are up by double digits. They end up winning by 18 points. Terrible collapse from Portland. Dame struggled for once. He had just 25 points on rough efficiency. The rest of the guys didn't really step up. They got decimated in the second half, mainly due to the play of Jordan Poole, who had 29, 5, and 6. He has a lot to prove still on the season. Hasn't been his best year after getting that huge contract in the offseason, but games like this show why he can be extremely valuable. Klay Thompson had 23 points, Jonathan Kuminga had 16 and dunked on like 4 Portland Trailblazers. Dante DiVincenzo had 21. It was an all-around team effort, which you need from Golden State if you're going to go without Steph Curry, if you're going to still try and get these wins, which they've done a good job of holding their weight, staying afloat. They're the 5 seed right now, strangely enough. Despite missing Steph Curry for most of the season, his return does seem to potentially be on the horizon. So if he can come back and the Warriors are anywhere near where they are at the moment, they're in a really good spot. And to wrap up the rest of the games, the Spurs beat the Jazz to snap their 16-game losing streak. The Nuggets blow out the Rockets led by Jamal Murray's 32 points. The Kings take out the Thunder led by Sabonis' 22, 13, and 9. The Raptors beat the Bulls led by Siakam with 20 points. And the Wizards defeat Atlanta in a really close one led by Bradley Beal with 37 points and Kyle Kuzma with 28. With all that being said, I appreciate you watching. Once again, please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you made it all the way to the end, you probably did. And hit the notification bell while you're there so you don't miss out on any of these uploads. It's been a great regular season, and I think it's going to continue that way the rest of the way until the playoffs. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the Mavericks. Are they in trouble, or is it just going to take some more time for this team to gel? And do you believe that Kyrie will return to be in a Dallas uniform next season? Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one safe back.